G'day guys, welcome back to True Eagle after a brief hiatus away from the camera and the microphone. A lot has been happening in my life recently, and I'm finally able to do a video because I now have moved house and from now on can actually film in the same place where I reside. That place is in Melbourne. I have moved from Perth to Victoria, and I landed less than 24 hours ago. So this setup where I'm talking directly to a camera and there's a blank wall behind me, I'm in my empty bedroom. I don't even have a bed yet. I'm sleeping on the couch. But I have a few days off before I start work, and I thought, what am I going to do with my time? Well, I probably should buy a car and a bed, but for the time being, I thought I'd make a video and just catch up with you all about what's happened in the last 3 weeks. A lot has happened for this football club in the last 3 weeks. But yeah, to clarify, I no longer live in Perth. I'm going to be here in Melbourne for a little while. On the plus side, what does that mean for this channel? Well, it doesn't really mean a whole lot. The entire first year I did True Eagle, I was located in the UK. So as far as that's concerned, there should be no real interruptions or impediments on my ability to make content. If anything, I'm still working out my routine here, but it should be a little bit more convenient for me to film whenever I want, albeit I still need to work out, what's my commute to work like, and, where's the nearest gym, and I still need to be active. But long story short, I should be a little bit more consistent going forward. And it was an unfortunate 3 weeks to take time away from the channel. The reason for that break, by the way, was actually I just had a lot of bad luck. I won't bore you with everything that happened, but just something would come up constantly, and it got to about 5 filming days in a row where I just said, hey guys, I'm going to take a beat. And in my last week, it was my last week in Perth, so decided not to film. So anyway, let's talk about the Eagles and everything that's transpired since I last did a video. I think, I didn't actually double check this, I think it was a review for the Melbourne game. And I did remember feeling at the time a little bit of a malaise, I suppose, a little bit with making content, which has never been a reason for me to stop uploading, but it got a little bit monotonous making videos about the games, going in the same way every single week. Just from a creative point of view, I didn't really know how to keep that fresh. Either way, that's not the reason I took a break, but I do remember feeling that. But funnily enough, since then, I feel like each and every game I've had strong opinions, and I've actually wanted to get on camera to be able to talk about them with you guys. So without going through each game detail by detail, I think the following game after that Melbourne one was the Richmond one. That was a heartbreaking loss. I remember feeling very uncomfortable and frustrated throughout the entire game. It actually reminded me a bit of the 18 grand final, only as far as the fact that I remember saying I didn't enjoy the game until we hit the front. It was like that. Whenever we hit the front, we couldn't hold it comfortably. And at the end of the game, the siren blows when they're in front. We were really unfortunate, but we shook off a poor first quarter, and then we played some pretty good footy. And I have to say, it was a continuation of some improved form over the last 4 or 5 weeks. So then we had the St Kilda win. That was awesome just to be there. I desperately wanted to see an Eagles win in person before I left Perth. And it was literally the last game I could attend. So an emotional game, of course. Adam Selwood passes away, I think 24 hours before the game, or at least the news broke a day before the game. And it was a very impassioned performance by us, absolutely no doubt. I felt like we were quite uncompromising in the way we played, which is pretty unusual for us. We didn't slaughter the Saints, but it felt like, even though we still made the occasional mistake, the effort level there and the intentionality that we played with, I'm just coming up with words at the moment, in that we would just work hard to cover those mistakes when we made them to make sure they didn't hurt us the other way. That really stuck out about that St Kilda performance, and it was a great win, absolutely. We're now a whole game removed from that, and unfortunately, the Adelaide Crows game didn't go so better. So I went into it feeling like the game was going to go badly because, we as a team tend to have these sides that we don't play well against, particularly away from home. And the Adelaide Crows have a knack for destroying teams on their home deck. And I just felt like, for the come down of the previous week's win, we might actually be quite vulnerable in this game. So I went in there with limited expectations. To their credit, I thought West Coast was really good for the first half, which will be forgotten about that game, and I understand that, because the second half was really poor. Certainly our poorest showing since maybe round 1. The Carlton game was bad, but we also, had a lot of more kids in that game, at least from my memory. The second half against the Crows, it just felt like we know this team can play better. So to get obliterated I think we conceded like 9 goals in the quarter. I'm not sure about exactly what it was, but it felt like a bit of a return to previous iterations of us. So a bitter way to end the game, but I will say that first half, I didn't see that coming from us. We really pressured them well. I mean, I feel like some individuals are stepping up. You know, when I got to Melbourne, I was talking to a few people about West Coast, because naturally over here, I don't think people, well, they're certainly not as in tune with how West Coast are going because they're not exposed to the same media. So we just had a bit of a yarn about it, and I do feel, generally speaking, we're still not very good, but there's a couple of things different. I feel like our resolve is a little bit better. It's only halfway through the year. I might have said that midway through last year. But say for a few occasions, we haven't really gotten pummeled. Well, certainly not as badly as it was. I know that's a low bar. But furthermore, I would say that we're getting a lot more even contribution throughout the team. It's kind of hard to pick who our best player has been this season. Liam Baker probably is a contender for the best and fairest, but past that, it's actually kind of tricky to really nail down who's carrying West Coast. But whereas by contrast, 12 months ago, you know, we'd had Harley playing well, but we had Waterman playing well, McGovern and Yeo. And it's funny to think, and I say funny in a very ironic way, but if you'd asked me at the start of the season, who are the 3 players West Coast cannot lose, or at least the top 3? Who are the 3 most important? You'd have one in each end of the ground. You'd say Jake Waterman, you'd say Elliot Yeo, and you'd say Jeremy McGovern. And all 3 are probably done for the year. Well, let's be specific. McGovern might retire. That's another thing that's happened since I last uploaded. I have no idea about how that's going to go, other than to say I feel like when it gets as far as being put to an independent panel to review his future, it's hard to see him coming back after that. So that is devastating for a number of reasons, primarily his health, but for the team it's really bad. Having said that, Sandy Brock and Harry Edwards have played some pretty good footy over the last couple. I thought Sandy Brock in particular was impressive against Adelaide. Elliot Yeo, he's still 6 weeks away on the long-term injury list, so who knows if we'll see him at all. I have grown to become quite skeptical. And then Jake Waterman just got ruled out for the season as well, so that is a bummer, to say the least. Jake's not quite on the All-Australian form that he was in last year, but he's still obviously adding a lot and has had big moments, big quarters, and he still kicked 3 against Adelaide prior to his injury, I think. So, yeah, that sucks. At least on that note, it does create some opportunity for someone like a Jack Williams, who if you're one of those people who doesn't understand why Jack Williams is not in the team, I'm right there with you. It seems to me, I almost have the impression that McCarthy thinks there's something in his game he needs to work on, because I don't really understand why he wasn't in the team for round 1. I get that there was a preference to play Archer, but it felt like Archer Reid kept his spot in the side a lot longer than perhaps he should have. No disrespect to the kid. It's just we're talking about 2 young talents that probably both we want playing at AFL level, but one's playing better. I would have thought Jack Williams is the man. So if that creates an opportunity for him, if it creates an opportunity for Job Shanahan, that one's not the be-all and end-all. But our midfield has been exposed without Yeo. It's not even great with Yeo in it. In fact, it was quite poor. And the back line has me nervous. But as I said, Sandy Brock and Harry Edwards are doing their thing. So as I record this, I think we are about 2 hours out from the mid-season draft. Now, I would have ideally liked to film this after that, but this is the best window for me to film right now. In any case, I don't really have strong opinions about who we might pick up. So waiting until after the mid-season draft, I'm probably not a great source for learning about that player. I will probably be learning about the second player at least after the fact. But it seems to be a foregone conclusion we're taking Tom McCarthy, a halfback flanker, 25 years old, out of the VFL, plays for Richmond. I think he was considered maybe not the unanimous number 1 pick, but someone I'd heard about prior to West Coast being linked with him. So it's interesting. My philosophy with a mid-season draft, or my thought process, is it really is just a case of best available. If you think this guy can play AFL and should be in your team, you take him. So I'd imagine that's happening here with West Coast. A running defender, I wouldn't say it's a pressing area of need, albeit we don't exactly have a lot of depth in any position on the ground. So if he's an AFL applicable talent, if he's got speed and I think good skills from what I've read, sure, I support the pick. I think it does create an interesting battle for spots now with Ryan Marrick, who has been okay this season. He's been decent. I think that he is finding the ball obviously a lot more. There's no doubt about that. I would like to see him develop some more confidence in the role and, perhaps use his foot skills as a bit more of a weapon. At the moment, he's a little bit conservative with his ball use, and he does leak a lot of goals with some brain fades. So I wonder if it's a McCarthy versus Marrick sort of battle for that position going forward. time will tell on that front. But it'll be interesting to see if McCarthy is selected as early as the Geelong game this weekend. As for our second pick, I really have no opinion or insight as to who we're going to take. I think Michael Selwood's expected to go to the Bulldogs, which means he won't be available. I've heard the name Milan Murdoch, I think is a midfielder. So once again, it made no sense for me to wait until after the draft to talk about these players with you. Look, if I have some opinions, maybe I'll do another video this week. But that's a little bit of a catch-up on where we're at. The West Coast Eagles are probably forgetting something else big that's happened in the last few weeks. You know, we discussed Adam Selwood briefly, discussed the McGovern situation, Waterman's injury, we've got the mid-season draft, and we've discussed the 3 games that happened since. So, who's looking forward to Geelong this weekend? If I'm not mistaken, I feel like we do go all right at Optus against them, but again, new game style, who really knows how this can go? It really kind of depends how hard Geelong want to play against us, because they are very, very talented and definitely have some weapons. Bailey Smith has been a great addition. Jeremy Cameron, I mean, who has an answer for him, let alone us? So we're just hoping that it's not a blowout, to be honest. But all in all, it has been an improvement over the last 5 or 6 weeks. I'm still hesitant to feel super comfortable with it. On the basis that last year at the midpoint, I think we were all fairly comfortable, being, 3-7 after 10 rounds, and with some really entertaining wins and a derby win. It's not as bright this time, but like I said, more even contributions. I think we've seen probably the best footy from Ryan Marrick, albeit, as I said, I think he's still got things to work on. I think Tyler Brockman has been a great addition to this midfield and someone I feel wrong about. I kind of didn't see it. Long term, it's going to be interesting because he definitely plays his best footy as a midfielder, but I don't know if he has the tank or the size to be a full-time midfielder, but at the moment, for what he's doing, he's certainly a really good contributor. Elijah Hewitt's back in the team and building steadily. Tom Gross, he's come back into the side, been made the sub, been messed around a little bit. Either way, I feel like we have an AFL level talent there. Generally, the contribution is pretty solid. I think Jamie Cripps got injured. That was another thing that happened. He's been good. Liam Ryan, as a senior player, has also been great. I think Liam Duggan is struggling personally. Oscar's finding his feet a little bit, albeit still not at 100% capacity. So, like I said, better evens, better contribution, a good amount of youth in the team. The team that played Adelaide was very young, even if it wasn't necessarily the youngest. It might have been the second youngest that round. We've seen Kelly move out of the midfield, which was an interesting development. I think people have been calling that for some time, but we are actually seeing it in action. So, for whatever your thoughts are on McQualter, you can't say that the guy's not having a crack and moving things around and experimenting and exposing the youth with a good balance of trying to be competitive as well. One thing that might make you feel a little bit better is I was looking through, and I actually didn't memorize it, so forgive me, but I think this is the case. When you look at a team like Richmond, who is going a lot better than us at the moment, I found the centre bounce attendances and who generally, fronts up in that midfield. And their top 3 midfielders are all pretty experienced. I think Taranto, Hopper, Nankerv is obviously is a decent, mature ruckman there. And you just compare that to West Coast. And the midfielder at West Coast who has attended the most centre bounces this year is Harley Reid. That's by percentage average per game. I think Clay Hall is technically first, but he played 3 games. So of players who have played a lot of games, Harley Reid is number 1. Tim Kelly, I believe, was second, although that is decreasing rapidly because he's obviously been playing at half forward for the last couple of weeks, I think. I don't think he's attended any centre bounces. And the next most active midfielder, or the most attended midfielder, if you like, is Elijah Hewitt. So you compare just the age of our midfield against pretty much any other team in the competition, and there's evidence there that we are prioritising the youth. And comparing us to some of these sides with more mature midfields, for instance, is probably comparing apples with oranges. So that made me feel a little bit more comfortable when I saw that. And generally speaking, our midfield has had a really even spread of people who have attended the centre bounce. So a lot of experimentation there. I think we've had some minor wins. Harley's played some better footy of late. His body's clearly still not right. I can't believe how much faster Elijah Hewitt is than him, whereas Reid was that fast. But I still think he's playing well. Hewitt's taking those centre bounces. We saw Gross in there for a couple of weeks. Tyler Brockman, Liam Ryan having an impact as well. So overall, I'm kind of comfortable with where we're at. I can't help but cringe a little bit about this Geelong game, but I do feel like we're on the right track. It's in the right direction, but we just need a lot of pushing. So there you have it, guys. That's me trying to summarise the last 3 weeks for the West Coast Eagles. I should be able to do a review this week on the Geelong game. Albeit the format for how I do it will be probably something I experiment with going forward. Just with work schedules, and it sounds silly, but the Melbourne time zone, the game with Geelong ends at 10:30 on a Sunday night. So whether I do 1 video a week or 2 and split that up into review, preview, just do 1 single show, I got to figure all that out. But for now, looking forward to hearing from you in the comments. How do you feel about the direction of the club as it currently stands? It's been 3 weeks, but it's good to be back. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Up the Eagles.